Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rails to Trails Conservancy's Celebrate Trails Day, an overview of the celebration and ways to engage webinar. For those of you who have attended one of our webinars before, welcome, and thanks for coming back. And for those of you who are new, welcome, and thank you for joining us for the first time. To introduce ourselves, my name is Suzanne Mattias. I'm Rails to Trails Conservancy's social media and engagement strategist. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm joined by
Brandy Horton. Hi, Suzanne. It's so exciting to be here today talking about Celebrate Trails Day. I am the Vice President of Communications. I also use she, her pronouns, and just thrilled to talk about what we have in store this year.
Thanks, Brandy. And yes, we are super excited to talk about today's subject, Celebrate Trails Day, but a little bit of background about us. So Rails to Trails Conservancy, we'll probably shorthand to RTC because it's a little bit easier that way. We are a national nonprofit that's dedicated to building a nation connected by trails, making it easy for people to get around by bike, foot, mobile devices, and beyond. And on this extremely drizzly winter day here in DC, we are so delighted to talk about Celebrate Trails Day, which is our springtime celebration of America's trails.
Awesome. Thank you, Suzanne. And thanks again, everyone, for making the time to be here today. It feels like April 27th is far away, but it's really right around the corner, and there's much work to be done ahead of all of us to get ready for that big day. And before we get into the technical aspects of Celebrate Trails Day, we wanted to talk just a little bit about kind of the theme and the bigger picture message that we're trying to communicate across the country. For the past few years, we've been talking a lot about how trails are more than recreation, but also how recreation is essential to our everyday lives. The pandemic showed us that in new ways, really increased, I think, the understanding of the public and of elected officials of how important trails, walking and biking are to what we do and how we live in all of our communities across the country. We're taking that message to a new level. And we're really focusing on the fact that spending time outside, spending time on trails is more than just a day outside. And full disclosure, this is part of a little bit of a preview of RTC's brand, which is evolving and will be introduced in just a few weeks, actually, and will really kind of update the message and the look and feel of Celebrate Trails Day. And it's a call to action. It's a call to action for communities to both recognize the joy, the personal joy, the shared joy that we all have when we spend time on trails, but the impact that that time has for ourselves, for our communities, and for the country. There is a very strong through line between the uniqueness of the joy that we can deliver as trail managers, as places that are working to create, connect, and better maintain their trails, and as an organization that's standing up as the voice for trails. So on Celebrate Trails Day, we want to celebrate all of that. We also want to think about how this is a moment to really grow our tent. When we're talking about what trails can do and the power of trails as connected infrastructure between people and places, within and between communities, as really increasingly routes to help us get where we need to go safely if we're walking and biking and not driving, we need more people to be a part of this movement. We need to expand our movement from the folks who love, live, eat, breathe, sleep trails, walking and biking, to the people who maybe are curious about it, to the people who are maybe they found their way outside during the pandemic and they haven't been back into that space, to the people who want to be active, they don't know where to go, to the people who are essential to directing the funding and the resources to developing this infrastructure. So as we talk today, and as you work to plan your events and your activities and how you might engage in this celebration, let's think about how we can really expand that tent, how we can really bring more people in to grow the support for trails, walking, and biking. We also want to think about this as a moment to launch what we're calling an inclusive rallying cry for this infrastructure. We often talk about the needs to increase the equitable access to this infrastructure. We are, many of us, working deeply in communities to build those relationships and those connections to this infrastructure. Let's use this day to make people understand what it means to have more than a day outside, what that does for our lives, and why that matters for every single neighborhood in America, and use this day to send a message that this is something that is life-changing and transformative for people all across the country. And when we think about this moment, we think about the opportunity we have. We often talk about Celebrate Trails Day as a chance to really put a spotlight on the infrastructure, to put a spotlight on the ways that this infrastructure is making a difference in places. But it's also a chance for us to create new connections. That's physical, that's actually to build support for the infrastructure we're trying to develop in places, but also to create new connections within communities for people who live in communities to meet each other, to get to know each other, to form and build those relationships out on the trail. It's a chance for us to really put advocacy into our messaging in a different way, in a fun way, in a joyful way. There's power in that. And at the top of the slide, I have kind of the trajectory of how people often come into our movement as that trail user, trail participant, to a supporter, to an advocate, and then hopefully to somebody who is an evangelist for this issue and for this infrastructure. That's true of our elected officials too. Many of our biggest supporters, whether it's in Congress or in state houses across the country, are people who found this work because of trails. So can we infuse advocacy in ways that is fun, that is enjoyable, and really engages our elected leaders, not just in the numbers and the information on paper, but in the real value and meaning of this work on an everyday level? Can we lift up the infrastructure and how this infrastructure is changing across the country? Just a few weeks ago, right before the holidays, we rolled out at Rails to Trails Conservancy really kind of the first major assessment of trail networks that exist all across the country. And we found that there are 150, at least one in every single state. That is an enormous message that we want to carry through Celebrate Trails Day so that people understand when we're talking about connecting infrastructure, this isn't something that's on the fringes. It's something that's happening literally everywhere. And there's still, though, so much work to be done to connect those networks, to fill those gaps. Use this as a moment to draw attention to those gaps that need to be filled, to draw attention to the work that's needed to be done to actually accelerate the pace of connecting those trail networks. And I would say most importantly, when we go back to the idea of joy and impact, this is a moment for showcasing stories. When we think about the connections, when we think about advocacy, when we think about infrastructure, those stories of the joy, of the impact, of how trails are changing lives are really what this day is about, because it helps people understand, it helps people make this something they believe in. It touches them on an emotional level. And that is, I think, the uniqueness of Celebrate Trails Day, is that we can really lift up the individuality of trails across the country, the individuality of that trail participant experience. And that joy comes to life for people in totally different ways because they're feeling it. It's visceral. And over the past 10 years, we've had quite a bit of impact, which is exciting. So this is technically the 10th anniversary of Celebrate Trails Day. The concept was introduced in 2013. And since then, we've had tens of thousands of people participate all across the country. For the past several years, we've had people participate in every state, which is really exciting, and people in Puerto Rico. So we've had, all of the states and several territories and Washington, D.C. So that's been very exciting. We're nearing the 1,000. I think this year we might cross the 1,000 mark in terms of how many events have been planned and executed across the country. So that is our goal, to really kind of take this to a whole nother level and really have as many events, as many invitations and ways for people to participate as they want to, and in their neighborhoods, in their communities. Another thing we've been looking at the past few years is just what is that really kind of immediate impact of having access to trails, having programming on trails, and how people behave. So we know that there's a lot of things that might stand in the way of folks kind of getting out there on the trail, whether it's time, whether it's feeling welcome and included in these spaces. And we also know, thanks to some of the research by the CDC and many others, that when there is programming, when there is culturally relevant or locally relevant programming happening in these spaces, it encourages people, whether or not they participate in that program, it encourages them to get out and use the trail because they know, hey, that's a space for me. That's a space that is doing, I like to walk, or I like to go birding, or I like to, take my family out for a scavenger hunt. Those are things that interest me, and that's happening in this space. So this must be a space that's relevant to me. So one of the things we've been tracking is how many physical activity minutes are generated because of Celebrate Trails Day. So for the past several years, we've been asking folks via a survey, so totally self-reported, but via a survey, just what they normally do on a typical week or a typical day in terms of physical activity, and how much time they spent being active on Celebrate Trails Day, and whether or not it was as a result of Celebrate Trails Day. So last year we were able to generate 1.3 million physical activity minutes on Celebrate Trails Day because of that programming, because of the programming people were hosting all across the country, and just the idea that it was an invitation on this day to get out there and do do the things that you like to do in the space, but make sure people know that this space exists and that it's important to you. So we want to top that number this year. We want to keep growing that number. That means more people are getting out there, more people are celebrating. Last year, we also had over 220 partners, over 120 events, and 13,000 participants. So when we think about this moment, we think about the opportunity moment that we are in, and really the call to action to celebrate that this space is more than just a day outside. It means so much more to all of our lives in different ways. We want to see those numbers grow, and we want to see partners in this space that maybe aren't our typical folks. So a challenge for everyone on the webinar today is to think about, like, who do you know who maybe should be a part of this, who hasn't been before, right? Whether it's an economic development organization in your community, whether it's a health institution in your community, a school in your community that could really benefit from having a deeper connection to the trails and the trail system where you live. And this could be a really great way to start that conversation and open it up. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Suzanne to talk about our goals and what we're trying to achieve at a tactical level.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brandy. Now that Brandy shared a bit more about Celebrate Trails Day, why we do it in the first place, what's the impact and what's the opportunity before us, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the 2024 celebration. So first up, most importantly, the goal. What are we trying to achieve with this? Brandy just described a lot that really gets at that. And ultimately, it's an invitation for all to get outside and celebrate their local trails. And the reason we do that, right, we find that the more opportunities to highlight how amazing trails are, to join the impact there, the better, right? So this is a springtime celebration that does that. It creates that national moment that helps demonstrate the value and impact of trails through something that's really fun. I can't believe it's been 10 years. That's amazing. So it's a day of a lot of joy, but also a day of a lot of impact. And as Brandy was touching on, in order to share and show this impact, we measure a couple of important numbers, one of which is participants, where a lot of you come in. We rely on our partners to bring Celebrate Trails Day to everybody, right? To more people. Hopefully the most people yet will hit some of those big numbers that Brandy was talking about. And the more people that are participating, more people that are connecting with their trails, the more partners that are helping do that, that all gets at that participation number, those increased connections to trails, right? That's what it's really about. And we also track the wellness benefits that Brandy was mentioning, those active minutes outside, how trails are really making an impact in people's lives, their well-being. And then we share that information in partnership with the CDC with all of you, so you can use that to help make the case for why trails are so important just on this one single day of getting everybody outside. So as I was saying, I was going to be talking about the 2024 celebration. We often get a couple of questions that come up. And I'm going to address those now, but I'll also be digging into them a little bit more as we proceed through the presentation. So the first one, how is it celebrated and when? When is the easy one. So it's the fourth Saturday of every April going forward. This year, that's April 27th. And to put the how is it celebrated under one big umbrella, it's ultimately by getting folks outside to celebrate their trails at an event. Or planning their own outings. As Brandy was saying, not everybody feels comfortable at group events, or they can all have proximity to it, right? So getting folks outside on their trails celebrate. And I'll dig into a little bit about how your organizations can get involved in those resources too. So ways to engage as a partner. This spring, we're hoping that partners like you will join us in helping make those connections between your community and your local trails, by planning those trailside events I mentioned, or by sharing words of encouragement and general resources to help people have their own trail adventures, to help make that invitation known that they're welcome in those spaces. Our ambitious aim is to make it so that everybody will have the opportunity to attend Celebrate Trails Day celebrations near them. And that really, like I said, wouldn't be possible without the partners like you around the country who are hosting events, inviting people out to their local trails. But in case, folks don't want to join a group event, or they want to plan their own thing, like I was saying, we also provide resources to help them have those activities, or to plan those activities, giving them ideas for what to do, some tips for how to do it, And we also have Trail Link, which is a great free resource to help people find local trails near them. All of these resources are on our website. So by being a partner, we ask that you spread the word about those resources that people can use on Celebrate Trails Day, but beyond or before Celebrate Trails Day as well. So there's events, there's promoting, letting folks know that it's happening. And of course, on the day itself, getting out there, letting folks know that you're a part of Celebrate Trails Day, that you're taking part, and that you hope they'll join you on the trail. And we like to amplify those celebrations all day as much as possible. So by sharing the word on social media and making sure to tag at Rails to Trails and use hashtag Celebrate Trails. So to inspire you to get brainstorming going, here are a couple of snapshots shared by our partners from past celebrations. They're both events and kind of just generally encouraging use of local trails. As you can see from the diverse range of images of, again, snapshots of ways people celebrated, there's a lot that happens. There's no one thing that works for everybody. There's what works best for you is what's most important. If you're able to to organize an event for Celebrate Trails Day, it's a really great way to connect with and grow your community. Again, getting those people familiar with and out on your trails, growing that force of people who are there behind you on the trails movement. So you're welcome to go big and creative. We've had some really neat events. You can see there's horseback riding on this one event. We've had spring markets that people have seen that invite local businesses and craftspeople to come in and to have that kind of activation on the trails. We've seen bike rides, we've seen walks. We've also seen things such as opportunities to get folks involved in a trail project. So in the top right screen, you can see a group of folks who are gathering. That was to raise general awareness and support for a trail project to be. It's a great opportunity, as Brandy was saying, to highlight the infrastructure and what's needed, right? To get people excited about this thing coming to their community, or to get them excited about asking to have it be a part of their community. You can also see bottom right that it's a fun way to get people to use trails however it makes sense for them, right? There's no one way that works for everybody. So inviting them out to those spaces in a way that they enjoy and makes sense for them. Birding or, riding historic bicycles, whatever works. And, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, like I was saying before. You can, if you regularly hold group cleanups, it's a great time to hold another group cleanup. And again, get that national visibility about why that type of stewardship in your trail is important to your community. So again, there's so many different ways to celebrate, and we like to try to make it as easy as possible to help you do so. I'll share a little bit of information about how we do that. So supporting your celebrations, we know it takes a lot of energy and time to do that. So to help make that easy, we support and lift up those celebrations through a couple of main ways. One is providing resources and materials to help you plan and promote those celebrations. And then visibility. We also get the word out about your events and how people are celebrating all around the country via our communications channel. So that taps into our national audience, our national grassroots community. And we use email, social media, our website, and beyond, really. And closer to the celebration, we'll be unveiling an interactive map on our website that helps people explore and learn more about Celebrate Trails Day events and celebrations around the country. So if your event details are ready to go for public attention, be sure to let us know. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and submit them so we can add them to the map. You'll benefit from all that promotion, from all that visibility that brings that attention and awareness to your local trails and the trails all across the country. So we'll kick off with a quick tour. Bear with us. This is a recorded video, so we're hoping the technology works. But this will show you some of those promotional materials that we mentioned. On our website, Celebrate Trails Day, you can find it pretty quick. You can Google search it. This gives you information generally about Celebrate Trails Day. This is where general grassroots audience will be sent. There's a whole partner section on that main page that goes to its own area, where you can sign up for updates if you haven't already. It's a good reminder, just so you don't miss any updates about partnership. Also, the toolkit. This toolkit will be growing and developing as we get closer to the big day. But for right now, we have a bunch of ready to go materials in there for you, including waivers, for events. We also have sample language, such as social media posts that are ready to copy, customized, best fit your audience. You can see where it's highlighted, where those customizations make the most sense. And then share them too. We also have sample newsletter blurbs, and we have a sample email, again, customizable to best fit your audience. And it's easy to copy it, but again, we do encourage you to try to make it your own. That's what ties people to their local trails. So this all, like I said, will be growing. There will also be available Spanish translated versions of all of this too. And that will continue to be updated in this toolkit as we move forward. We also have a bunch of graphics, including some print ones that are ready to go right now. This is a half sheet flyer. Ultimately, you can start papering that, or you can start getting this out right now. If there are community bulletin boards, that sort of thing. There's a QR code there that'll direct people to the Celebrate Trails Day website. So as the events become available, it's easy to get there, but also to all the resources and information. We also have a bunch of fun graphics that are ready to go for you. These are digital ones. They're sized right now for the email, newsletter blurbs, all those social media posts I mentioned. And again, as we get closer to the big day, this toolkit will continue to be updated with more information, more resources, including some advocacy tips that Brandy was touching on. This is a great way to encourage your local elected officials to be a part of the day, to see again that value and impact of trails through such a joyful celebration. So again, we do try to make it as easy as possible. Part of that is helping to promote, or providing those resources to help promote the event. We also like to offer some materials to help make your event pop. These are backed by popular demand, a lot of them. This year, we tried to offer to as many partners as possible free. We cover the cost to make it, again, as easy as possible for you. We have trail yard signs. You can see those on the bottom left, thanks to one of our partners. And there's an opportunity for those to be co-branded with your logo again. So it's your trail that's showing up. That's a part of the celebration, this national celebration. We also have on-trail decals, which is the one in the middle there. They're kind of like, I like to think of them as temporary tattoos for the trail. We also will have print your own item templates, right, that you can download and send to your local contact or other print vendors, and those include selfie frames and banners. And depending on demand, we'll do our best to accommodate all the requests. But again, we try to make it as easy as possible by covering those costs. And as well, to thank participants for partaking in Celebrate Trails Day, we also, thanks to the support of our sponsors, have been able to provide prizes for folks to help incentivize them to get on the trail, to be a part of your celebrations, right, across the country. So on to the events. Again, events help bring people on the trail, that type of programming that Brandy was mentioning that makes people feel welcome on the trail, that gives them that extra encouragement to get to know you and get to know their local trails, as well as the community members who join them out there. So we have a couple of tips. Again, each event is different, so you should definitely check in with your local guidance. But a few things here: should build and recreate responsibly principles into your event. For example, consider a cleanup plan to keep the trail looking beautiful, especially if you're going to have anything that produces waste, such as candy wrappers, that sort of thing. Double check that you have any permits or permissions needed to host your type of event where you're planning to have it. Depending on your situation, you may also want to consider if you need any coverage, such as event coverage, insurance. And as much as we don't like it when this happens, accidents can happen. So please be sure to consider first aid and to come prepared. April can bring all types of weather. We really have seen a lot of different types of weather over these 10 years. There's snow, sun, rain, hail, a mix of everything. So just in case, please do plan ahead and come up with an inclement weather plan. Make it a free event. Again, we want this to be an invitation for all to be out on the trails. So we want to make that as easy as possible, make everyone feel as welcome as possible. And RTC gives preference for promotion for the events that are free, that are held on Celebrate Trails Day. And then speaking of promotion, of course, let people know about your event. Send those invitations out, get the word out. And again, we try to make that seamless by providing that promotional toolkit. So you can help let folks in your community know about what's happening on your trails, but also let the broader world know that there's this great day that encourages everyone to get outside wherever they are. So those are some event planning tips to hopefully guide you through that process. And next we'll talk a little bit about timing, right? Being very much so in winter, April 27th may seem like a long way away, but it'll be here before we all know it. So as you begin your planning now, or we encourage you to start thinking about it now, we wanted to share some key dates to help make Celebrate Trails Day and your celebrations a big success. So you can see January again, kicking off the new year strong. This is where you can start having those conversations about what an event, if you're willing to host one, might look like. This is an opportunity to reach out to some partners, as Brandy was saying, that might not have been a part of the celebration in the past, but also to start engaging your audience. You're already here for the webinar, so you're ahead of the game. And February 27th, 2 months out, that is when we will ask folks to submit any of the materials requests they might have. Again, those are those things like yard signs and the trail decals. We'll be sending out information soon about when you can start requesting those. So that way you have enough time to consider your needs for the event. And then March 27th, that's a month out. And at that time, we strongly encourage you to, if you have information available and ready for public consumption about your events, we do ask that you submit it to us so we can maximize the visibility that we can offer it through our promotions. Again, that information will go on that big map, and we'll be sending as many people as possible to check out that map so they can find ways to participate near them. Early April, that's when you'll be getting the great materials and resources that you requested, like those yard signs. So you'll have enough time to put those out in advance to create that buzz about what's happening on your trail on the day. And then April 27th, as you all probably know by now, I think we've said it about 15 times, say a couple more. April 27th is the big day. That's Celebrate Trails Day. So we hope you get outside and encourage your community to join you in celebrating trails. Right after Celebrate Trails Day, that's when we released that impact survey and that self-reported survey that Brandy was asking. So we asked everybody to try to fill that out and to share it with their communities so we get the most information we can about what the day looks like, what that impact will bring. And then in early May, that's when we share the results of that survey. They'll be totaled and anonymized, so it'll just give kind of sweeping overviews that Brandy was sharing before. And then in May too, we ask that you save the date for Celebrate Trails Day 2025, which will be April 26th. So that's a little bit about timing. We do hope you start planning ahead now, and be sure, if you haven't already, to sign up for those updates, those email updates, because that's how we'll be communicating about the materials and other kind of opportunities and reminders and other resources too to help you make your celebrations a big success. All right, here's the home stretch, a recap of what we went over today. But as a reminder, this recording will be made available on our website. And as long as you have signed up for those updates, you'll receive more information from us that will help. So a couple of key things here to remember: Celebrate Trails Day, fourth Saturday of April every year. This year, that happens to fall on April 27th. Every spring, the state encourages people to get outside and celebrate their trails and all the ways that trails can make a difference for people, places, and the planet, really highlighting that value and impact of trails. And we do hope that all of you and other people in your community that you might want to reach out to and to invite as well will partner with us in this celebration by either planning an event or encouraging the use of your community's trails generally. Again, that helps create that national moment that brings awareness and appreciation for trails to the forefront. And as a reminder, we try to make it as easy as possible to become a Celebrate Trails Day partner, to be a part of this big celebration. And we hope you will check out our toolkit, which again is a growing resource. So there will be more things added in there as time continues, and that you sign up for updates. And if you already have, watch your email for more information about requesting those materials and for other key information news, pieces of wisdom, and other ideas that help make your celebration a success and to make them fun. And as a reminder, you can always check out our website for any updates, resources. Again, where we'll be encouraging people who are going to participate in Celebrate Trails Day to visit, to learn more about all the ways to get involved in this year's celebration and beyond. And with that, we will open it up for questions.
And Suzanne, we have a few already in the
great.
chat. So, and I've been answering as folks have been submitting questions, the ones that just made sense to answer kind of live and type them out. And one question that was great was about whether or not we know if other people maybe in someone's state are having events so that there could be more state collaboration. So I just wanted to share what I said was, I love the idea of people in the same state collaborating and working together. And I think when we talk about some of the goals around advocacy or really kind of raising awareness, showing the strength, in one state of all of the different kind of trail segments or trail networks that are blossoming is so powerful. How can folks find out if there are events in their state?
That is a great question. And again, when there are those kind of partnerships through trail networks or what have you, other active transportation systems, That's a great way. You might already be tapped into a community of people who are in your state. But another way is when we do share that map, right? That national map we were talking about, the interactive map, we're going to post all the different events that are taking place, and they'll be by state. You'll be able to click on that event for more information. That'll be another way to find out what else might be happening in your state, and a good way to reach out to fellow partners there. That information, it'll say who's hosting the event, that sort of thing, will all be available there. So it's another reminder that if you do know what type of event you're planning and those key details like who, what, when, where, that sort of thing, to get that in as early as possible. But again, we strongly encourage by at least a month out.
I
Love that
also,
question. Thank you.
yeah, that's a great question. And I also shared, you can't see him. He's helping us behind the scenes with the slides and the production. Eduardo on our team will be working directly with a lot of partners this year. So you might hear from Eduardo. Maybe Eduardo, you could turn your camera on and say hi to everybody. A few folks who asked specific questions about like their event, I suggested, I suggested that they might reach out to Eduardo directly because it was a very specific question. Another question here, which again, I love, is from John in Little Rock. And he says that they are interested in using this as a moment to build some momentum to complete the Arkansas River Trail, which is a 15-mile trail loop. And so will there be specific suggestions around advocacy? And so I wanted to answer that one live because the answer is yes. So there are some new advocacy resources that are being developed that we will add into the toolkit this year. But just kind of off the cuff, ways we've seen people do this in the past. One is really leveraging this as a moment, both for press and PR, but also to have some sort of a call to action. So depending on what might be the barrier to kind of getting that 15 miles done, whether it's public support, political will, really, needing the local elected officials to see and understand how important it is. There's chances to engage people in a direct action. So sending a message. We've had big postcard campaigns that were really successful before, where maybe it was a place where the folks in the State House were like, we don't think anyone here cares about trails. And then they get flooded with a bunch of postcards that say the exact opposite, and drawings and letters and little love notes about their trail system. In other situations, it's been more of a stick, where it's like getting a lot of people to sign on to a petition that says there's not enough happening. It's also really powerful to simply invite local elected officials to the event, because that visceral reaction, that moment of, oh wow, my constituents really do care about this, goes a lot farther sometimes than an email or something in writing can go. So we will share those tips and resources, but I love the idea of using this as an advocacy moment, depending on what's happening. It is a Saturday. Somebody also asked, like, if they're having an event during the week, can it be part of Celebrate Trails Day? Absolutely. Like, think about if, your legislature is in session, you could have like a Friday at the State House and then turn that into Saturday on the trail for the celebration. Lots of ways to bundle this. And I think the most important part about Celebrate Trails Day is it creates a moment centered on joy and fun to also really bring and deliver some impact. Is there anything, Suzanne, you want to add to that?
I think that's great. And yeah, there's just a natural tie-in with advocacy, right? There's that demonstration that's happening live, which is really powerful. And who doesn't love to be invited to a party, is what I like to say. So by inviting those elected officials, it's a kind way to bring them into that and to also see that impact. And I'll also say that, we do encourage people to get outside for Celebrate Trails Day, but that doesn't mean that it can't be some type of digital or, component like that. So by sharing on social media, showing again kind of what that celebration is live, that's gonna bring in more people. Say, like, what is happening? What is this local trail? And that filters up to the people who are big decision makers, right? And then also, as Brandy was saying, it's a great way to have maybe an email alert or something like that, where people can double down on their efforts after they get outside and realize how much they love the trail. They'll be more inclined to hopefully send a note saying just that to their elected officials.
So we have a note here too from Michael in Ohio's 3rd Congressional District, who first says thank you for doing this and for all the partners here and all the work we've done. But that, I think just a reinforcer on the advocacy front, they've seen events like this provide hope and provide community in difficult times. And, we talked a little bit earlier about the connection that trails deliver. And this is an opportunity to talk about that. And that community piece of like seeing your neighbors in a space where you might not otherwise see them, learning who your neighbors are in a way that you might not otherwise connect with them is so powerful. So that notion of building community, building hope, and then leveraging those emotions to actually translate into progress for the infrastructure is what we think this day is about. And I'll use that. We had another question from Don who asks why Celebrate Trails Day and National Trails Day are different. And I think that's a really helpful segue into that question. We work closely with American Hiking Society on a lot of different political issues, on engagement issues. They help us to amplify Celebrate Trails Day, and we help them to amplify National Trails Day. The reason the days are separate is that the purpose is a little bit different. Celebrate Trails Day is really about lifting up trail participation on multi-use trails, in particular, all across the country. We want to showcase this unique infrastructure. We want to showcase the momentum behind this infrastructure, the really kind of everyday demand for this infrastructure. American Hiking Society and the National Trails Day celebration focuses a lot on volunteerism and stewardship. And that participation looks different in hiking trails, single-use trails, than it does on multi-use trails in a lot of ways. So there's some overlap. We have some partners who actually do events on both days, which we commend, and they'll actually strategically say, like, we're going to make Celebrate Trails Day our cleanup because we have a big ribbon cutting that we're going to tie to National Trails Day. So I look at both days as an opportunity. No one should feel compelled to participate in both. I think it's about looking at your own project goals, your community goals, and kind of which message, which mechanism kind of makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The more opportunities to celebrate and lift up trails and to highlight them, the merrier, right? It's a nice way to kind of have that additional touch point.
That's right. Suzanne, Philip asks us, what strategies have worked to get local media attention for Celebrate Trails Day? What have you heard from folks about that?
That's such a great question. I think it really depends, right? Where sometimes these stories, if it's a trail project and rallying support for that, that's a really big story, right? That's the community coming together to work on a project that benefits everybody. So that's a great opportunity. If there's if there's something unique happening on the trail, like the most people fist bumping. That was something that happened at a Celebrate Trails Day celebration once. That's a fun story,
we
right?
didn't break it, but we got a lot of attention for trying, and we were pretty darn close.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of kind of unique or opportunities to garner that local media attention. And then also, as we were talking about, we're going to have this great survey that's going to share the impact of what a single day on the trail can mean. And we're going to share that information with all of you. So although it will fall after Celebrate Trails Day, it is another touch point that, again, raises the visibility and recognition for the value of your local trails, but also trails as a whole. Any other thoughts there, Brandy?
Another question. No, I think everything you hit on is spot on. And, one of the things that we have found effective is Saturdays can be hard for press, especially local press, in large part because we all know newsrooms are shrinking. And sometimes, like a camera crew, there might be one on a Saturday, and that's it. Or none on a Saturday because they're pulling from regional coverage sources or things like that. So we have found really, like, sometimes using the week leading up as a chance to really talk about what's happening, or using Celebrate Trails Day as a way to create the news hook to talk about that regional trail plan, giving them something a little bit fun, a little bit lighter, because we know this work to connect and create and maintain trails is a lifelong journey. It's not something that happens in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. And so sometimes reporters get a little like, well, what's the big news? And so this gives you a kind of a fun and easier way to like have a moment and a reason to talk about those big picture projects that sometimes the trajectory is longer than the news cycle. Unfortunately, that's the reality of our work. A question here from Tom that, again, Suzanne, I think is perfect for you. So is this the same date as Earth Day? And this year it is not, but last year we shared, and that was really fun. And they're saying that in Louisiana for several decades, there has been the Louisiana Bicycle Festival on the Tammany Trace, which is a Hall of Fame award-winning trail. We love the Tammany Trace. And the last couple of years it's fallen on Earth Day. So could we do an event coordinating those two things for the Choctaw Nature Trail? What do you say?
I think that's a fabulous question. Thank you so much for asking that. And also, Christy, mentioned something similar where Celebrate Trails Day might have an overlap with another initiative. This is their Love Our Cities program. It is such a great opportunity to bring in other things that are happening. You know, Earth Day, although it's not falling exactly on Earth Day this year, Earth Month is all of April. There are these tie-ins. I think there's a National Park Volunteer Week. There are a lot of other kind of events and initiatives, efforts, campaigns that fall around the same timeline. Why not use that again as an opportunity to invite more people to the table, more people to the event, more people to the celebration, fold in all those things. If anything, it highlights again how multifaceted that value add is of trails, right? There's health, environmental, there's so many ways that trails offer those benefits. And these other kind of initiatives, these overlapping moments, that only helps lift that up even more. So I think that's a great idea. I know we've done, you know, there have been tons of great cleanup events. So I think that's a fabulous kind of way to loop everything in together.
Agreed, wholeheartedly. There's a few comments that are coming in that I will drop in the chat, and I think that maybe the chat was supposed to be open and it wasn't. So I will transfer those. People are asking some questions of each other. So as I scroll through here, here's a good one. This is a good advocacy stick/carrot question. So what if the trail has already received funding over a year ago, but the elected officials have not provided any information about the millions of dollars that were awarded to create this trail? Now, I do not know the full context. I do not know if this is a good relationship, a medium relationship, or a more challenging relationship, but it could be a chance to put some pressure on them publicly, right? You're having a big event, people in the community, because, you know, I think the reality for most everyday folks and kind of the lay person is that they don't understand the details of all of these grants. They don't understand when we say like, whoa, we got like a raise grant or we got a this, they just, you know, it's money. They don't know really where it comes from. But when you say something like, hey, we were awarded a grant and we're still waiting, you know, Congressman Jones, what's going on? They start to understand that maybe they're not getting what they were promised. And the member of Congress or the local elected official also understands that they're in trouble. Now, that can be the stick option, but it's also a chance, maybe even just to very innocently celebrate the money, right? And then you're kind of elevating that there's money and now there's some accountability. It can be an accountability moment too. But I will just caution that that is very, dependent on the scenario and the relationship, because whether you and I always counsel folks, think about carrot or stick. This can be a really fun carrot event where you bring everyone together and it feels good that you can then leverage for progress. Or, you know, if things it needs to go, you know, to that stick place and you need to be a little bit more hard hitting, that's okay too. This is a good question, Suzanne. I'm going to ping this one to you. Would Rails to Trails Conservancy promote Celebrate Trails Day for a municipal trail system that is being developed, but is not necessarily a rail trail system? What say you?
The answer to that fabulous question is absolutely, right? The more people that are engaging with their trails, the better, in our opinion. So yes, absolutely, especially if this is a system in a whole region or a community, that's really great because you can highlight those opportunities where there's connectivity that's afforded to that area by this trail system. So yes, we love rail trails. They're, you know, they have a special place in our heart. But we love multi-use trails, right? Any way that's getting people out in their communities, outdoors, you know, so of course that is extremely welcome and we do promote those types of opportunities as well.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, multi-use trails is the priority. So it's rail trails, it's greenways, it's canal towpaths. It's also very much about how these trails are connecting to each other and to places in the community that are important. So where in lots of places, and I don't know if anyone is on from the lower Rio Grande Valley, but the Caracara trails at the southernmost tip of Texas is a great example where you have a multi-use trail system as the foundation, but it's plugging into water trails, it's plugging into natural resource areas and conservation areas, and it is about building an active transportation and an active tourism plan for the region. So in that situation, what you're really elevating is all of the ways that the trail system is creating new access to nature and the outdoors, both for the people who live there and for the people who come to visit as part of an economic development strategy, a quality of life strategy. So really, I think everything is fair game. You know, we probably wouldn't elevate to the same degree something that was just focused on, say, like kind of backcountry hiking trails or something of that regard, because it really is about that multiple use, multi-purpose infrastructure. Suzanne, someone wants to know if we can put the timeline back up before we log off. I think we can do that while we're talking here. So I am going to mark that as done.
Yes.
Greg Alexander says, we've decided to do our yearly bike rodeo to teach bike safety and provide free bike helmets in conjunction with our Celebrate Trails Day this year. I love that. And it gets families and kiddos out on the trail, which is a great way to build lifelong supporters. Typically, this has been done in conjunction with EMS services at a safety expo in the fall. It made more sense for us to do it at the beginning of the trail season. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now they're going to get those skills and put them to use all summer long. Plus, it can hopefully give more people a reason to come out to our Celebrate Trails Day event. So he shared that concept to inspire ideas. I am going to drop that one in the chat for folks as well. It's a lovely idea here.
Absolutely. And we're
Go
also going to share some ideas in ways people have celebrated in the past, again, just to help that brainstorming process. We mentioned cleanups, bike rides, but yeah, there are so many different ways to celebrate, and we'll share some of those tips from thanks to the great ideas of partners like yourselves from the past. And that'll be in the toolkit.
Very much so. So here's a good question. And I feel like we've kind of touched on this around the edges, but are there any recommendations on tying this to a campaign for a new big regional trail? What do you think?
I think so, absolutely. You know, a big regional trail, if it's however far along in the process it is, whether it's the very beginning or, you know, somewhere in the middle, we have funding and some feasibility studies have been done, or at the very end, there's an opportunity there to celebrate that, right? Celebrate the promise that will be, the promise of, you know, as Randy was saying, if there's funding, maybe a lot or, you know, allocated, a reminder about what's to come, that promise, or you know, anywhere along the process, maybe it's a ribbon cutting, but it's, if you're bringing people out to the trails, letting them know kind of what's happening, coming up with some way to activate them and have them engage with it, whether that's maybe it's looking at a map of what the trail will mean for their community, giving them that sense of place, or maybe it's going on a partial ride, that sort of thing. There are just so many ways to do it. We've seen these great temporary kind of art pieces too that also highlight, you know, what's to come along the trail, what that'll mean. So there's just a lot of ways to do that. And if it's a trail system that might have multiple points, right? You can have a series of smaller events, maybe that tie into a bigger event on a larger trail system, right? Some trails are very, very big. And it's great when the different sections might be celebrated kind of uniquely. And love it when they can all tie together. So there are a lot of ways to do it. And we welcome your creativity, but we also, you know, if you have additional questions for us, you can always reach out to later.
I think that we have hit the end of our questions, but there was a reference in chat about whether or not we're sending out swag. And I know you talked briefly about resources, so maybe we want to put a fine point on swag. And I think another plug here, and I'll copy and paste this back into the chat to make sure you're signed up for partner updates so that you don't miss invitations to get the swag.
Yes, we know swag is always a popular thing. We love swag. Who doesn't? And we know that it's a great way to, again, kind of elevate what's happening when celebrations are going on your trail. So yes, we will have those materials, that swag. We've done stickers in the past. We'll have those yard signs that, again, kind of create that buzzworthiness for what's going on in your trail. So that will be made available to you all this year. Again, we will try to accommodate all the requests that we can, and we will cover the costs. And then again, thanks to past partners or past support from our sponsors, we've been able to offer swag to people who say, I'm going to celebrate. And that's great. And that's just another incentive. So you can remind people that, hey, there's this opportunity. If you sign up and take part in Celebrate Trails Day, let Rails to Trails know you might win. And then on the day, get outside and join us for a wonderful day on the trail. And, you know, if you have your swag by then, bring it out if it makes sense for the day.
I'm just going to drop a new, I think I dropped directly in the chat earlier, the link to the toolkit. And I'm going to put this back in here because for some reason that earlier link didn't work. So this is the URL to our website where you can access the sign up to be a partner, share your interest, as well as access the toolkit materials. And just to note that those toolkit materials will continue to grow over the coming weeks. I already have from the question, somebody asked about ideas for fundraising and kind of local sponsorship. So I thought that would make a really excellent tip sheet, Suzanne, just to put in some ideas
Yeah.
and examples of how people have been able to get local businesses involved or local kind of community-based organizations to help support support these events. And we know from others out there that that's been very successful. So try that link I just dropped in there. If it doesn't work, rails2trails.org/celebrate trails. That's kind of your entry point and your hub to everything. All of the partner materials, also all of the public materials that you can use in your own messaging and your own amplification. So it's the button with the link that isn't working. Okay, perfect, Ben. We will get that fixed. So bookmark that. We'll get that corrected and make sure that that is working moving forward. Is there
Yeah.
anything else, Suzanne, you want to share with folks? Otherwise, I would say
I'll
off to
just
planning.
yes, and to help kind of spur that along, I think one reason I love this webinar is that there are always so many ideas that are shared by the attendees, and this has been a really great example of that. A lot of people have shared thoughts and ideas and kind of what they've done in the past, from bike rodeos to other events and activities. If you're looking for a place to exchange ideas, of course we'll share those updates too, but we have this great resource called the Trail Nation Collaborative. We actually have a Facebook group for it, and it's an opportunity for you to exchange directly with fellow trail professionals. It's quick and easy to join. So we'll be sharing updates about Celebrate Trails Day there as well, because it brings in trail experts, trail managers, other people who are involved and engaged in trails. So it's a great space for you to talk about what you're doing on your trail generally, but also maybe some ideas and opportunities for Celebrate Trails Day 2024. And we'll also share that link too if you'd like to join for the collaborative if you haven't already.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Happy planning.